Delighted to say, joining me today, as always on a Monday, we always look forward to his comments, commentator Sam Armstrong. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, simple question. Should Keir Starmer sack his Chancellor?
Well, you kind of got a question. I mean, if she goes, he has to go too, because anything you can say about her, you can say about him too. But it's the record of lying that jumps through. It's worth just going through the list. She said before the election she wouldn't put up taxes. She now has. She lied. She said when she got in that there was this sudden black hole, which was grossly overstated.
Yeah, out of the blue.
She lied. She said that the economy was going completely down the pan at a press conference a few weeks ago. It now turns out even the BBC, Chris Mason, has come out this morning and said she lied to the public. And now, having put up all of our taxes, albeit many of them secretly, and then secretly putting up benefits for a bunch of people too, she's lying by having the guts to go out there, the sheer chutzpah to go out there in public and pretend to us that she has not just directly, brazenly broken a manifesto commitment that she made to the public. She got the job on the basis that she said she wouldn't put the taxes up on working people, and she has done exactly that.
And there's a difference, and I think for an awful lot of people there would be a difference between, look, she wasn't planning to, and then the public finances were in a mess, things changed, we had the Trump tariffs, blah, 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 things changed, and then she had no choice. And that was very much the message that went, as we now know from the front page of the Times, to the Cabinet. They were told, look, basically, the Office of Budget Responsibility is going to basically say these numbers are terrible, we're going to have to put tax up, we don't have a choice. So we are going to, the fairest way of doing it is this manifesto breaking increase in the basic rate of income tax. Massive outcry from Labour backbenchers who, no, can't do that. And then they row back on it. And then we discover, when we see all the books last week, that actually things weren't as bad as we thought they were. Now, she crucially pretended that things had changed. Very interesting, the Office of Budget Responsibility said, who aren't very responsible when it comes to leaking budgets 45 minutes early. There's a report into that. We're going to see the results of that later today, hopefully while I'm still on air. How on earth someone pressed send, 45 minutes. Well, actually not even 45 minutes, way too early. You're not supposed to see it until the end of her speech. They've said, actually, in response to a letter from a committee of MPs, the facts are, they actually use the word the facts are, making it very clear that the claims that had been made by the Chancellor about things changing was not true. Because 5 days before the Chancellor did that early morning press conference in November, on the 4th of November, telling everyone, basically we're in a terrible state. Look, I'm just going to, lay the groundwork for why we're going to have these tax rises. They had already told her that wasn't necessary. What do you make of the defence? And this was given by Darren Jones, who used to be Chief Secretary of the Treasury. He's still working in Number 10. He's a senior figure in government. He says, look, this was done. And Rachel Reeves was very clear last week. She kept saying this was my choices, my budget. I mean, it was very weird, the way she kept saying that. I wonder whether Keir Starmer had asked her to do that. Nothing to do with me, Gov. Darren Jones's defence was, on the numbers that the Office of Budget Responsibility given, they would only have what's called, £4 billion of headroom. This idea that it's your rainy day money, it's your little, you basically have a family budget. You have if you can, you have some money in savings in case there's a hole in the roof, the boiler breaks, the car breaks down, or the kids need school uniform new that you before you expected, whatever the level of expenditure. And basically saying 4 billion is literally money down the back of the sofa, a small change for a government, and it needed to be bigger, and they've now got a bigger headroom, and that's a political choice, but it's also something that is actually a good thing for the government to have done. And if they'd stuck to where they were and it was just 4 billion quid and they hadn't had those tax rises, then everyone would be criticising them for that and the markets would have gone haywire. What do you make of that defence?
Well, look, I've been in politics for a long time, and here's how it actually works with a budget. In the weeks before the budget comes out, people on the government side of things, people are trying to make everything go well, pretend that everything is much worse than it is every time. When the Conservatives were in power, I was involved in some of that. You try and reassure everyone, you try and tell everyone it's all doom and gloom. And then when the day comes, it's actually not as bad as everyone thinks, and it's all wonderful. And there was a transparent, deliberate exercise by this lot to try and do exactly the same. But contrary to what they'd said, tried to get in, it turns out they're not so competent after all.
No, shocker.
And they managed to go way over the top and then had to row it it back and forth about 4 or 5 times before the budget, because the markets frankly don't trust that Rachel from accounts has got a command of the economy. So when they
I don't think she's got a command of even the basics of economics 101.
I'm frankly worried about the kind of service she provided as a customer service advisor on the telephones.
I mean, seriously, they're just the main message we get from this government is just really not very good. And you think sometimes it's just the PR of it and the communications. No, they're not very good, and they're rubbish at PR, and they don't have a plan, and they're not sticking to it.
But fundamentally, actually, where the taxes are gone, we all know it. The simple truth is what everybody out there understands, which is this government made a decision. I don't think
political decision.
I don't think it was a planned decision. It wasn't what they went in trying to do, but I'll come back to why they've had to do it. They made a decision to take more money from working people because they literally cannot get any more money from the ultra-rich at this stage. They chose to get more money from working people to give it to those people who are on benefits. Why? Because Keir Starmer, despite having a record majority, is totally in hock to the bunch of Corbynista student union politicians that make up the Labour parliamentary party.
Who unfortunately haven't gone to your party yet, in capital Y.
And he attempted back in the summer to make tiny, minuscule, like hardly even scratching the surface changes to eligibility for certain types of benefits and how generous they were. We saw there was that whole big rebellion. A bunch of Labour MPs ended up getting kicked out of the party temporarily. Some of them are back now. And the result is this, that Keir Starmer cannot do anything about the fact that the number of people on sickness, out of work benefits in particular, especially for mental health conditions, is ballooning. And for every single person that goes in there, not only do you have to find the money to pay for them on benefits, but you lose the money that they were earning in income. And as a result, the sums are just increasingly not going to add up. So why does Darren Jones think he needs more headroom? Well, because he thinks that the level that we're spending on welfare is going to go up next year and not down.
And that was the prediction from the Office of Budget Responsibility. I think what's really interesting, and you touched on this, the BBC political editor Chris Mason this morning, he went on their flagship show, the Radio 4 Today programme, and he said it was his conclusion that the Chancellor misled, in his words, misled people about the state of the economy in that 4th of November press conference that she did first thing in the morning. And, that's quite something. Chris Mason, I've known Chris Mason for years. He is widely respected. I can tell you right now, I don't think anyone other than maybe Mrs. Mason knows how Chris Mason votes, genuinely. He is considered to be studiously neutral and fair and not hyperbolic. And he says the Chancellor missed the nation. Now, added to this, you've got talks about, Financial Conduct Authority being basically, if the government basically gave false information publicly, and I aimed at the city, not just journalists and us as ordinary voters, so that the city would be relaxed when they did actually release their budget last week. If they manipulated the markets with false information, that's a crime.
Yep.
That's a crime. So Financial Conduct Authority has been asked to investigate. We've got Nigel Farage, and I think also Mel Stride, the Under Chancellor as well, but Nigel Farage, Leader of Reform, have asked the Prime Minister to get Sir Laurie Magnus, his ethics advisor, to look into whether or not there's been a breach of the ministerial code, lying to Cabinet, lying to the Commons, lying to people in public. So we've got Cabinet Ministers saying, look, they basically completely lied to us. This is really, really serious. Can Keir Starmer sack Rachel Reeves, realistically, and stay in his job? Because no one, maybe Keir Starmer, seems to think that he can last in his job past next May. Question marks about him lasting till December. I don't think actually any of the people who want to be leader want the job before the next May local elections, which are going to be dire for the party. But realistically, can he sack his Chancellor when she's going, but you knew everything? She's on record saying the Prime Minister knew everything, and he was in this cabinet meeting basically. Can he sack her, or is he stuck with her?
I think the reality is he's stuck with her. This is a Prime Minister that has already got too many powerful Labour women in particular sat on the backbenchers with an axe to grind. You've got Angela Rayner, you've got Lucy Powell, Rachel Reeves would kind of complete that triumvirate, and I think that would be fatal for him. But my worry goes deeper, actually, which is I really worry about the future of this country when you have a Labour government elected on such a tiny part of the vote. But this government entered into office, we now know, on the basis of a lie. They lied to us about the kind of government they would be and the kind of policies they would pursue.
I mean, everyone was saying, and not just the other part, not that the Tories in Reform, everybody, every political journalist, every economist, the Institute of Fiscal Studies, everyone was saying their numbers don't add up, they're going to put taxes up.
But I'm sorry, Julia, I am not prepared to live in a country in which politicians
blatantly lie like that.
Blatantly lie to the electorate with impunity. I'm not prepared to live in a country.
And they shouldn't be rewarded. I mean, again, we need to hold people to higher account. And again, they need to go. We need to start having a rule. If you do actually do the opposite of your manifesto, and again, things like the jury trial thing. I mean, we told David Lammy's Justice Secretary there was some talk at the end of last week that they were going to drop these plans after. I mean, basically, Labour backbenchers don't want it. The public don't want to drop jury trials. The barristers don't. The judges don't. The Law Society. I mean, come on. And then, we're going to go ahead. Apparently tomorrow he's going to go ahead with it.
Jury
trials. That wasn't in the manifesto. There's no mandate for this.
Jury trials have been an ancient right of every English and Scotsman. Both countries have had this system for 800 years or more. And we now have people who tell us they treat human rights very, very seriously, and with a pen stroke, are attempting to steal the inheritance of everybody that has been born in this country, that has contributed to this country, who was guaranteed that the state, the government, the people that run this country, they cannot take your liberty away. The only people that have ever been able to take away your liberty in this country have been your fellow citizens, your fellow countrymen. That is the system we've had. And to end that just on a whim, again on some fake crisis, the courts are going to fall over. Well, how about you put some more judges in courts? How about you open up some more courtrooms? Half of them are sitting there empty.
Everyone I've spoken to is barristers, judges, and I've asked them, they've always said, like, the juries, you've got a whole load of people who are required by law to turn up to jury duty. There's a whole pool of like 100 people sitting there in the jury room waiting for trials to start that don't start because they haven't got the courtroom open or no judges. Exactly. It's a load of absolute nonsense. I mean, I don't believe it's going to be allowed to start. I genuinely think it's going to be stopped somewhere along the line. But it's just appalling they're thinking of it. What do you make, though? Talking of justice, Tulip Siddiq, my MP, Labour MP for Hampstead and Highgate, she has been convicted of corruption charges in Bangladesh following her aunt, the former Prime Minister, being convicted as well. She's been sentenced to death in her sentence. She's fled off to India. But Tulip Siddiq's been convicted and she has been sentenced to 2 years in prison. She didn't give evidence in court to defend herself. She didn't go. We have no extradition with Bangladesh. So the argument is that it wasn't a fair trial. But she could have turned up to defend herself, crucially. But the interesting thing, she was the anti-corruption minister. Yes. She was forced to resign because you can't have an anti-corruption minister being accused of corruption by the way, a Commonwealth country, right? But it's what's fascinating. Again, these are judge-led courts in Bangladesh. They don't have juries in Bangladesh. So I don't know what the government can complain about because it's less than 5 years behind bars. So presumably, if Tulip Siddiq was being tried in this country, she would also be tried by a, let's face it, politically appointed judge. Now, we pretend we don't have political appointees in our justice system like America does, but they're blatantly, openly, Democrat or Republican. But no, we do. You can't get a position as a judge now unless you toe the line on lots of issues, the DEI thing, certain issues, your career, are you seen as a troublemaker or someone who quietly goes along when the Prime Minister says, throw the book at people over the Southport riots? I mean, genuinely, I don't know how they can say this is an issue and this is not, by the way, also, can we just have a thing? Every reporter saying she refutes these charges. No, she doesn't. She denies these charges. Refuting means she proves they're not true. She has not proved they're not true. She has quite categorically failed to prove anything at all. The government, the court in Bangladesh says she's guilty. Can she stay on as an MP? Because I'm pretty sure that if I was convicted in another country of a major charge and sentenced to 2 years behind bars, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't still be in my job today.
Absolutely, categorically, no. She needs to go. She needs to go today. We cannot have members of Parliament sitting, making laws for all of us who are literally convicted of corruption. Yeah. She is, according to a court, corrupt. And as Keir Starmer was so fond of saying, lawbreakers cannot be lawmakers. Yet as of now, it's 10:21 on the 1st of December, she retains the Labour whip, despite the fact, a court of law, that she had every right to get on a plane. There's plenty of planes between Heathrow and Bangladesh. Go out there. You say it's not true. Go out there. Look, she doesn't like the court, no doubt in part because it is no longer run by her aunt, who was also just convicted on the basis of recordings of ordering the shooting of unarmed, innocent protesters that were fed up with what they saw as her corrupt reign. This is...
Oh, by the way, and Tulip Siddiq never criticised this.
This is a scandal. And no, she was too busy flying with her aunt to go see Vladimir Putin, to go get some nice shiny gongs. If this was anybody else, the outrage would be off the scale. The thermometer would have broken.
Imagine if a Reform MP was doing this. Imagine what Labour MPs would be saying.
And by the way, just this kind of just attitude from the Labour Party, oh, it's Bangladesh, it doesn't really matter. Excuse me, I'm sorry, if I said that, I would be accused of blatant, outright racism to say that Bangladesh and Canada, as you say, it's a Commonwealth country. We enjoy close relations with it. If there's a problem with the legal process, point it out. But you don't get to just say, they're foreign, they're brown, therefore the courts are awful, because that is blatant racism.
Absolutely.
And there are members of the Labour Party that are participating in an outright racist smear on Bangladesh this morning.
I have a funny feeling that I don't think their justice system is very good, but it would be nice if she might have spoken out about it at some point when her aunt was there. By the way, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch has been doing a Q&A session with our good friend, the economist and journalist Liam Halligan, about the state of the economy, along with Mel Stride and others. And she has said this about the Rachel Reeves. The Chancellor, says Kemi Badenoch, by the way, I mean, no love lost between those women. The Chancellor appears to have given false information deliberately to try and give her budget a soft landing. If a CEO, Chief Executive Officer, had done this before their annual meeting, they would be sacked. This is why Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride has written to the Financial Conduct Authority. I do believe she should resign because of that. Now, not just giving false information deliberately. I'm wondering how tenable this is. Prime Minister under a lot of pressure. He's going to give a speech very shortly. Hilariously, he's going to give a speech about how we need to reform welfare. He's going to be talking about, oh, we've now got the groundwork laid for reform and for growth. I mean, you've been in power for, for a year and a half now, mate. You still haven't got any. There's no growth. There's no reform. They've just spent an extra 16 billion quid on welfare, and now he's talking about how we need to reform welfare. You couldn't make it up. Can we talk, though, just before we go to break? Because I've just got to... I'm loving your party, OK? Jezbollah, it's basically lefty Jezza Corbyn people, along with basically radical Islamists. I mean, that's... And a lot of non-binary people with nose rings and blue hair. Everyone has to state their pronouns before they speak, and they had an annual conference. Absolute chaos. And I mean, Life for Brian does... Genuinely, Monty Python couldn't have written a sketch this funny, and those guys were comedy geniuses. But in terms of, the People's Front of Judea and the Judean People's Front splitters, I mean, we had Zara Sultana boycotting the first day of the conference of the party she helped launch, as was Labour MP with Jeremy Corbyn, because some of her mates who were socialist worker supporters weren't allowed in the conference hall. She then spoke yesterday. He spoke as well. They're absolute farce, massive infighting already. And then, I mean, big infighting largely between, let's face it, the Islamists and the lefties, because it turns out the Islamists, slightly sexist, not keen on the gays or the trans people, and the trans people and the gays and the women not so keen on how the Islamists treat them. Who would ever have guessed any of this, Sam? But even more hilariously, Jeremy Corbyn generously said he would be willing to stand an election for the leadership. We know Zara Sultana would also like to be leader, but the conference voted by a small majority, 51%, to have a basic committee leadership. So they're going to have 20 ordinary party members, ordinary blue-haired, I mean, come on. And they are going to decide party policy. This is genuinely... You do not need Netflix, people. Get rid of all your subscriptions. You don't need any of them. You no longer need to watch any other reality telly. This is where it's at. This is going to be hilarious.
Yeah, if you want a walking demonstration of why communist countries don't work, the Politburos, the plotting, the backstabbing, the factionalism, you saw it in full vibrant colour. And by full vibrant colour, I mean blue, I mean pink, I mean purple, and that was just the hair.
Yep.
All out on great display. Now, actually, though, here's the thing. I actually think this is very bad news for Keir Starmer, of all people, because what Keir Starmer was hoping was that the left were going to kind of split and fracture up into 100 different things and they were going to be disunited. Actually, what I think this terrible failure of what's about to happen with your party, our party, their party, whose ever party.
Jezbollah.
Their party, must be, can't be his party.
They, them.
Is actually going to strengthen the hand of the Greens and Adam Polanski, who is obviously crackers because he believes that he can hypnotise women's breasts to grow.
It worked for me.
But other than that, he is beginning to lead, and he has got an incredible reach to young people through TikTok and a number of other things, and he is going to strengthen the hand of the left. And if he does that, Keir Starmer, who's basically betting the House and everything else with it on the fact that at the time of the next election, the Labour vote just has a look at the idea of Prime Minister Nigel Farage and says, no, thank you, and comes back to Labour. If the Green Party are going strong, he's in real trouble. And that's what I think this heralds in 2 years' time.
As I say, it's all going to be hilarious. Honestly, there's doom and gloom. It's a bit miserable out there. People like worrying about their finances ahead of Christmas, but we've got to have some stuff to cheer us up. And thank you, Jez, for that.